what the Democrats are now doing is they are prepping the groundwork for saving democracy. Saving democracy. Now, the word democracy is used by Democrats in a way that does not mean democracy. Democracy is popular rule. When it is used colloquially, it can encompass terms like, for example, a democratic republic, meaning that there are checks and balances in the system and it's not direct democracy. Typically, democracy technically means that if we're all in a room together and we want to make a decision, we all vote on that specific decision. A republic means you have representatives, which means you don't vote directly on many of the decisions that are being made. You instead delegate the power to vote on those decisions to a representative government. And typically that representative government has a series of checks and balances. So the United States is a republic. It is not, in fact, a direct democracy. It's a democracy in the broadest sense, which is that we vote, but it's not a democracy in the technical sense in which you vote on every issue or in which a pure majoritarian popular will gets to decide every single issue. In fact, the founders decried exactly such a system. They saw that as what they would call a mobocracy. That would be a problem for them. They would not want everyone voting on every single, they wouldn't want just a series of referenda on every single issue that go to the popular vote, which is why you have all of these intervening institutions in the government. It's why the Congress is represented on a popular level, but the Senate was originally supposed to be represented at the state level by the state legislature. State legislatures were originally supposed to pick their senators. It's why the Senate itself is not proportional. It's why Montana has the same number of senators with 7 people and a cow as California with 45 million people or whatever it is. It is why you have a series of checks and balances between the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judiciary. It is why you have an electoral college. There are all sorts of institutions in our republic that are designed to check excesses of the mob. And if you read the Federalist Papers, that was very much forefront of the founders' concerns. Why is that important? Because there was a shift in the way that people thought of democracy in the United States, and it started in the early 20th century, late 19th century. It was a takeaway from German progressivism. So weirdly enough, much of modern American government, our structures, particularly the administrative state, are drawn from the Bismarckian social compact in Germany. One of the big admirers of that system was Woodrow Wilson. So Woodrow Wilson, who was a Pointy-headed professor, obviously he was the dean of Princeton University before he ran for president of the United States. So Woodrow Wilson wrote extensively about German progressivism and what he saw as his vision for what democracy should look like. What he believed is that the Constitution of the United States had outlived its sell-by date. Now, all these checks and balances were useless. He wanted something that was more democratic and also less democratic. More democratic in the sense that he wanted a popular vote for one guy, and that one big man would get to make all the decisions with the help of a bunch of administrative bureaucrats who are experts on the issues. In other words, he wanted a government of expertise, and he believed that all the checks and balances thwarted that government. So, for example, in 1908, he famously wrote, quote, "The president is at liberty, both in law and conscience, to be as big a man as he can. His capacity will set the limit. And if Congress be overborne by him, it will be no fault of the makers of the Constitution. It will be from no lack of constitutional powers on his part, but only because the president has the nation behind him and Congress has not." In other words, Congress has all these checks and balances, and there's this weird sausage making in the background, but the president is elected by the public, effectively speaking, and that means that he should have as much power as humanly possible. Why was that important to Woodrow Wilson? Because he believed in the setup of an administrative state, an entire branch of the government that was effectively independent of the popular will. So in 1887, again, big admirer of what Otto von Bismarck had done in Germany with social welfare systems and with a government from the top of bureaucrats, he wrote, quote, "Administration lies outside the proper sphere of politics. Administrative questions are not political questions. Although politics sets the tasks for administration, it should not be suffered to manipulate its offices. Let me say, large powers and unhampered discretion seem to me the indispensable conditions of responsibility. Public attention must be easily directed in each case of good or bad administration to just the man deserving of praise or blame. There is no danger in power, if only it be not irresponsible. If it be divided, dealt out in shares to many, it is obscured. And if it be obscured, it is made irresponsible." So to put that in simpler language, what he is saying is that there should be a series of effectively unaccountable, non-elected bureaucrats who are experts, and you can yell at them, but you can't get rid of them. And they should be given wide discretionary power to set how policy is done because they are the experts. So when Democrats say democracy, this is what they typically mean. They do not mean that they respect the institutions of the republic. They don't, for example, respect the Supreme Court of the United States, except when it is giving them precisely what they want, right? This is why you have seen this bizarre attempt to uphold the Supreme Court of the United States by the left at the same time as undermining it. So, for example, Jill Biden yesterday, she came out and she said, Joe and I respect the courts. She said this with respect to the conviction of Donald Trump in New York, and also purportedly with respect to the conviction of Hunter Biden in Delaware. Although, again, I think that sentence is very likely to be commuted if he gets any jail time at all. Here is Jill Biden declaring her respect for the courts.
Your husband, the president, has said he wouldn't pardon your son. He wouldn't commute his sentence.
That's correct.
As a mother, though, you must want to see this burden lifted off your son. Do you wish you could do that?
Well, Joe and I both respect the judicial system, and that's the bottom line.
Well, I mean, they don't, because here's Joe Biden over the weekend ripping into the Supreme Court, which is at the apex of the American judicial system.
The next president is likely to have 2 new Supreme Court nominees. 2 more. He's already appointed 2 that have been very negative in terms of the rights of individuals. The idea that if he's reelected, he's going to appoint 2 more flying flags upside down is really, I really mean it.
Could this be the scariest part of all of it?
Well, I think it is one of the scariest parts of it. Look, the Supreme Court has never been as out of kilter as it is today. I mean, never. I taught constitutional law for 9 years. This guy knows more about it than most. Look, the fact of the matter is that this has never been a court that's been this far out of step.
That is obviously untrue. So undermining the court at the same time that he's upholding the court system, supposedly. Okay, again, the pitch here for Democrats is they like to say the word democracy because they want to portray Donald Trump as an incipient fascist. And so CNN did a big report yesterday setting up what will be the terms of the debate next week. The terms of that debate are going to be very simple. They're going to say that Donald Trump is undermining democracy while Joe Biden is upholding it. But as we're about to discuss, it's actually Joe Biden who is hell-bent on undermining the actual democratic republic. So CNN went out and they interviewed a bunch of Trump supporters and they asked about Donald Trump undermining democracy. And the Trump supporters correctly said, we don't live in a democracy, we live in a republic, which, as I've explained, is technically true. We do live in a representative democracy with a series of checks and balances that thwart the popular will on a regular basis. But here is CNN explaining it's very bad to say that we live in a republic, not a democracy.
These words were used in different ways in the 18th century, and it's true the founders didn't want direct democracy, by which they meant people gathering on the town square. They wanted representative democracy. But I think the reason why this conversation about language has risen now is because there is a part of the Republican Party that would like to rule as a minority, and they need an excuse for why that's okay. And so they have begun to say, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. And it's not 100% clear what that means, but I think they mean we want Donald Trump to be able to do whatever he wants.
Okay, this is so Orwellian. The reason this is Orwellian is because it's total projection. The people who want the president of the United States to do whatever he wants without any checks and balances are typically Democrats. It's literally the program of Woodrow Wilson going back to the early 20th century. Not only that, the setup of the administrative state allows Democrats to overrule both the democracy at large as well as the institutions of the republic, because they are unelected bureaucrats who sit there for years on end and literally thwart the elected branches of government. And that is exactly what Joe Biden is planning. So Democrats are looking down the barrel of this 2024 election. It does not look good for them. And so they are already preparing to do what they want to do if Trump were to win. What is that? They wish to subvert the institutions of the republic. I don't mean that in a soft sense. I mean that in a very hard, real sense. They are looking to subvert the democratic institutions of the republic. They're looking to subvert the legislature. They're looking to subvert the presidency. They're looking to subvert the courts. It is one of the reasons why, for example, they are hell-bent on ensuring that the Supreme Court does not overrule what's called Chevron deference, which says that administrative agencies are basically unanswerable to other parts of the government, including the courts. Are you tired of the lies and the twists of the mainstream media talking points? Yeah, me too. Join me in my newest series, Fact, where I dismantle and bring truth to this tiring mainstream agenda.